Okay, Shlosh Grandim before Shlema. So Sharpul Israel. We're in a period of time called the 3 weeks. We call in Yiddish the dry Wochen, and even in English is very dry, very hot. In a time when many of us get hot under the collar, even if we're normally very peaceful people, very easy to get a little bit ruffled and hot and argumentative when things get hot, when we're physically hot and we're not feeling so comfortable. So we find during this time a lot of very serious tragedies occurred to the Jewish nation, 5 of them on Yud Zayin Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, and 5 of them on Tisha B'Av. And this is also called Beina Mitzarim, be in the straits. It's like you're in a very tight spot, and where it's very hard to get through the straits, right, through this narrow little passageway. And it says in the beginning of Eicha, Kol Rodfeha Hisiguha Beina Mitzarim. All of our people who pursued us caught us during this time. World War I apparently started on Tisha B'Av, and even World War II was brewing very seriously. Didn't really hit till the beginning of Elul, 1939, but the winds of war were raging. They didn't start actually till a little bit afterwards, but they were already very, very serious pogroms, etc., which preceded the war itself. And a neighbor who was from Europe, from Poland, and described how, Shalom Aleichem, good to see you. He wrote a book about it actually. He survived it, a whole pogrom that occurred before World War II, because the Polish were trying to show the Germans how pro-German they were. So, unfortunately, their way of showing it was by killing Jews. It's a very serious time in our history, and the Chazal say that the final destruction of the Second Temple was because of sinas chinam, hatred which wasn't for a proper reason. And as we've stressed in the past, it doesn't always mean hating someone outright. Sometimes it's just a small feeling in the heart that I just don't like this person, but you don't really have a reason for not liking me, you just don't like them. And the only real reason to not like a person is because they do averas. That's what the Gemara says. The only real reason for having someone you hate is that they do averas. But even then, they say that we should try to get rid of the hatred by helping them to do mitzvahs and helping them in other ways. Because if a person hates you in the right reason, it can develop into the wrong kind of hatred very easily. And therefore, for example, the Gemara says if you see your enemy's donkey struggling, you should help him, right? You should help your enemy. Why? To get rid of your hatred. The Gemara asks, how did you hate him in the first place? You're not allowed to hate any Jew. It's also to hate. It's an Isra in the Torah. Lo sisnes achicha v'luvavecha. You're not even allowed to hate a Jew in your heart. Even if you don't show it, you're not allowed to hate anyone. So how does the Torah say you saw the chamor of your hated enemy? You don't hate anyone. You're not supposed to hate anyone. How's the Torah even acknowledging that there's a hatred? So the Gemara in Psachim says that we're talking about a person who did averas. You saw him do an avera. And therefore you're allowed to hate him as far as the avera is concerned. To hate the avera, to hate him for doing the avera. But the Gemara says you still have to help him. Why do you have to help him? If the Torah is allowing you to hate him for doing the avera, then why does it want you to help him to get rid of the hatred? It seems like a contradiction. So the Gemara says, because even though it might start out as proper hatred, but it quickly develops into unrequired hatred. The improper hatred. And the Gemara actually explains it a very interesting way. If I hate you, even for the right reason, you're going to hate me back, right? Like we see today amongst the non-religious. The non-religious, especially in the last few years, have become very verbal and sometimes very proactive against the religious because they feel that we hate them, so they hate us back. And that's what the Gemara says. Maybe I was allowed to hate them because they do averas, but then they're going to hate me back. Kamayim apanim el apanim. It's a pasuk in Mishlei that if I hate someone, they hate me back. Even if they just sense that I hate them, they hate me back. And then when they hate me back, then it's going to, right? It's a vicious cycle. So then it could develop very easily into a hatred which has no basis in halacha whatsoever. So the most important thing is to hate the avera and to continue loving the person. That's really what the Torah is commanding you to do. And therefore, you'll try to help the person to do better. You'll try to help the person in other ways. And like Aaron the Cohen, who helped Klal Yisrael do tshuva in a very roundabout way by helping them, by loving them, by caring for them. Everyone loved him in the end. It says when Moshe Rabbeinu died, not everybody cried for Moshe Rabbeinu because he had a lot of enemies. But when Aaron died, all of Klal Yisrael cried. Why did all of Klal Yisrael cry when Aaron? Because he knew how to be makar every Jew. Every Jew, he had a special way with them. Nobody felt he hated them, even though he was trying to be makar of them. That means I could look at you as doing an avera and not be happy with that, but I can react in a way that shows love and breed more love in return. And that's the example we have to follow. So this is a time where we're trying to, as the Chafetz Chaim says, replace sinas chinam with avas chinam. To replace the problem with a solution. What was the problem? People hated each other without a proper reason. Even if it's a very subtle hatred. Even if it doesn't show on the outside. So we have to also show love to all Jews. Again, even if you don't show it on the outside, but in your heart, you have to love all Jews. You have to love every single Jew, no matter what he looks like, no matter whatever his situation is, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant. And even if there are times when you have a right to hate him, right? Because maybe he did something against you. Maybe he's not a person you want to really spend a lot of time with. It doesn't say you have to spend time with him, but you have to love him. In the same way that avas, sinas chinam could be subtle and in your heart, avas chinam also could be subtle in your heart. It has to be something you work on. You work on loving every Jew in order to, at least for the reason that we know that that's what will bring the third Beis Hamikdash. And if I know that that's the reason, so even if I'm not doing it for the highest reason, but I want to really love every Jew because there's a mitzvah of loving every Jew, but at least I'll motivate myself that I would love to have a third Beis Hamikdash. I'd love to see the Kohanim do their avoda. I'd love to have a korban that could get rid of all of my averas. And even if I don't bring a korban, every day there was a korban tamid that got rid of averas. And every Rosh Chodesh, every Shabbos, every Yom Tov, there was a korban musaf that got rid of more averas. And so Yerushalayim is called Klilas Yofi. It's the most beautiful city. Why? Because everyone who was there didn't have averas. Imagine an entire city without an avera, because everyone was there. If they had an avera, they just went and brought a korban and got rid of it right away. So even if that's our only motivation, we have to try to feel a love for every Jew. Even if it's a Jew who's unpleasant, even if it's a Jew who's done something wrong to us, of course, if you can rectify what he's done, if he's done some kind of damage, you can talk to him about it. But it's your feeling in your heart that we're talking about. But I think the part of the problem is we have this. I found when I started thinking about this topic that we often have misconceptions. For example, if I have to be b'shalom with every Jew, does that mean I have to always give in to every Jew? Does that mean every time someone says something I have to agree? Right? In a way, it feels that way sometimes. Because as soon as I start disagreeing, we get into an argument, and then often nobody feels good about it at the end. The Gemara actually says that Torah is supposed to be fought over. Right? The Gemara says that it's called a milchama. Right? The learning of Torah is like a milchama, the Gemara says. We're nasim oivim. We become oivim. Oyev is an enemy. Right? And we know that when we go into a Beis Midrash, we often hear people arguing and yelling and screaming. Sometimes it even gets a bit violent, right? Banging, and sometimes picking up a stender, and who knows what else, right? But the Gemara already talks about that. The Gemara says that's fine. But nasim ohavim, at the end they have to be ohavim. That's very interesting because the word oyev and ohev are very similar words. Right? You have ohev, aleph, hey, base, which of course I normally think of the root of being hav, which means to give. As Rav Dessler says, you can love someone by starting to give to them. And the more you give to a person, the more you love them. That's why mothers love their children so much, because they're always giving to them, that they naturally have this love for their children, and they give everything to them. But oyev, you take the hey, you make it into a vav. Right? So in a sense, you're taking the love and you're diverting it. And if you say the yud is part of the root, then you're making the hey into a yud. In some sense, they're related because the Gemara makes a play on the words. It says when we're learning, we're oivim zelazeh, we're enemies. But as soon as we finish, we're supposed to be ohavim, nasim ohavim, as if there's a small switch. You just have to make a small switch between when you're arguing to afterwards you make up and you're friends with each other. The Gemara brings an example of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, who often had very serious arguments, as we know. But the Gemara says they were still friendly with each other. They would still marry each other's children and so on and so forth. Unless there were actual halachas there were certain halachas that they argued over where they couldn't actually intermarry on those particular halachas issues, but generally speaking, they learned to get along with each other, even though they disagreed vehemently with each other in learning or other issues, but that did not prevent them from loving each other. So learning Torah should be the perfect workshop for learning to balance our relationship with other people. That we don't have to be yes men and just say yes every time someone says something, right? But we don't have to just argue for the sake of argument either. Just like in learning, we shouldn't just say no or argue because we want to just argue. We want to find the emes. We want to try and find the truth. So if someone's saying something that doesn't seem to us to be true, we have to question them. But the reason why I'm questioning is not because I don't like them or because I want to show them to be wrong or I'm trying to defeat them. Therefore, at the end, I can become an ohev again. It doesn't at all affect our personal relationship. If we both together were searching for the truth, and I really couldn't do it on my own, right? Because when we learn on our own, even though a lot of people can learn on their own, it's certainly good to try to learn on your own, but the Gemara compares a person learning on his own as kerav al abadi. The Gemara says it's like a very dangerous situation if someone only learns on his own, unless you're like a gadol ador, like the Chazon Ish used to learn on his own, or whatever. But basically, the Gemara says it's if two people learn together, even if both of them are already good at learning, it's like two knives sharpening each other up, right? That each one challenges what the other one said, and then each one has to provide an argument why he thinks he's right. And by doing that, you increase your knowledge, you increase your awareness, you increase your ability to perceive things properly. And the Gemara says that the same thing when Reish Lakish was nifter, Rabbi Yochanan almost went crazy, almost went insane, that he didn't have his chavrusa anymore to learn with. It's a very sad Gemara, because actually Rabbi Yochanan had a bit of a hand in the death of Reish Lakish. But in any event, that's a whole story, their relationship. But it's clear, and for example, when Rabbi Yochanan, when Shimon Bar Yochai came out of the cave, he was much sharper because he had been learning for 13 years with his son inside the cave. And when there was somebody who just agreed with everything he said, you're not any help to me that you're just agreeing with everything I say. I want someone who will argue with everything I say. So the argument is welcome. The argument is good because it's achieving a very good thing. So therefore, I actually love the person who's arguing with me. And after I finish learning, even though at the time of the learning we were oivim, but it's nasim ohavim, because we're both trying to achieve a higher goal, which we did in some part achieve. Either we achieve better knowledge, we achieve better skills, better thinking, and all of that. And therefore, this person is just like the one knife has to appreciate the other knife that is sharpened it. A knife can't sharpen itself. You have to rub one knife against the other to sharpen it up. So one knife, as it were, if a knife could speak, it would thank the other knife for helping to sharpen it up. So that's why learning is the best workshop for practicing these skills of not just being a yes man, but also learning to love each other even amidst the argument, right? That at the time we agreed to argue, right? Or like some people say, we agreed to disagree, right? Let's agree to disagree. Sometimes that's true also. You have to just say, we don't agree. You have presented your view, which I don't quite understand, and I presented my view, which you don't quite understand. And each one respects the other. Just like Beisha and Beis Hillel, that they still respected each other, even though at the end of the day, they present each one their own opinion, which is often not like the other. So, this is maybe our paradigm for trying to achieve a balance and achieving the Avas Chinam, which we need to try to achieve to bring the third Beis HaMikdash and to eradicate the Sinas Chinam. It doesn't mean that I'm a yes man. It doesn't mean I agree with everything that's being said, but I can love that person because he challenged my view. He gave me an opportunity to grow, at least intellectually, to think about why I don't agree with him or why I feel differently. And therefore he helped me to grow. And there are many other reasons to love every Jew, right? We don't realize what every Jew contributes to the Jewish nation. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. Every Jew is like a guarantor on the loan of another Jew. That means we're all connected, we're all interconnected. And Arev is from the word mixed. We're all mixed and interconnected. So that if I do Averas, it affects the other people improperly. If I do mitzvahs, it affects them in a good way. And we're all affecting each other. We're all gaining in a way from each other. Each person has something they're good at. Each person has something that they contribute to the Jewish nation. And it not only makes the Jewish nation stronger, but it also brings down more shefa from Shemayim. Right? Maybe I'm good in one mitzvah, but I'm not so great in another mitzvah. But another person somewhere in the Klal Yisrael is. And I don't always know who that is. So I have to respect every Jew. Because there can be some one thing that they're doing that no other Jew is doing in that same way. That's bringing down a certain shefa from Hashem. And ultimately that will bring the Gula as well. So each person I have to respect, each person I have to love, because there's something unique about each person, that something I don't have, but they complete me in a certain way, just like a husband and wife complete each other, make each other whole in a certain respect. Klal Yisrael are like little computer chips or little pieces of DNA that together we make one body, we make one goof. Ki ish echad b'lev echad. That's the mashal Chazal give. How can I be an ish with every other Jew? It must be that we're all little parts of the same body, that somehow we complete each other. And we as a nation have a relationship with Hashem as well as each individual has a relationship with Hashem. So I think personally, it's a reason why this Parshas Pinchas came right in the middle of the 3 weeks. I don't know if every year it comes out at the same exact time, but probably around the same time. Because in this parsha we also see a very strange situation where Klal Yisrael was basically coming apart at the seams. This Nasi of Shevet Shimon went and publicly did an Aveira. Half the Jews were starting to do Baal Peor or do Znus, and Hashem sent a Magefa. Hashem sent a plague. 24,000 people died. In this week's parsha, Rashi says he feels they were all from Shevet Shimon, but he brings a Midrash Tanchuma that says it could have been a lot of them were from other Shvatim. And when Pinchas went and did his act of violence and killed the Nasi of Mamash Nasi of Klal Yisrael publicly together with the girl that he was having relations with. According to one opinion, he speared them with a spear, and then he came out and he held them up for everyone to see. And it's a whole question because he would, right? How did he do it exactly? And there was a big rift amongst all the Shvatim, whether he should be praised for such a thing or to be killed for having killed, and whether he was like an upstart because he had roots that went all the way back to Yisro, who actually did Avodah Zorah once in his life. So many people said this act of killing is not a Jewish thing. What he just did shows that all of his acts are related back to people that did Avodah Zorah. So Hashem said at the beginning of the parsha, no. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron a Kohen. His yichus goes back to Aaron, who was Ohev Shalom and Rodef Shalom. And this is what we said before, that Hillel said, Havei me Talmidav shel Aaron, right? It says in Pirkei Avos, which a lot of people learn during the summer to offset these problems of the summer, that Hillel Oimer Havei me Talmidav shel Aaron. You should be Talmidim of Aaron. What does it mean to be a Talmud of Aaron? Aaron's not around. The answer is I'm going to learn up what he used to do and I'm going to try to emulate him. So what did he used to do? Ohev Shalom, V'rodev Shalom. He should love Shalom and then run after it. Right? It's actually saying more than what we said before. Not just to love people, but to run after Shalom. That means you hear of a machlokas, you try to help people make Shalom. That's one of the things Aaron used to do. He went to one of the two sides of a machlokas and he said, Shlomo wants to make up with you. And then he went to the other side and he said, Moshe wants to make up with you. And each side he would say things that made them want to love each other again and make up. And he tricked them. He ran after that shalom. He did a lot of physical exertion of his own time and energy to make shalom. And that's what Hillel's saying. You should be from the Talmidim of Aaron. Learn from that. Learn from Aaron that he loved shalom and he was Rodef Shalom. And he did two other things. Oyeves Abrios, he loved all people, umakarven l'Torah, and he brought them close to the Torah. That's what we said before. That everybody in Klal Yisrael cried when Aaron was nifter because everyone loved him. Why? Because they felt his love. How do you feel someone's love when they try to help you? He tried to help every single Jew. He was either Rodef Shalom, when Jews had machlokas, or he was makarven l'Torah. So he did not just sit with feelings in his heart. He ran after to make shalom. Ran and went and was makar people to Torah. So it's one thing to love people. That's very, very good, and that's a high madrega. But Hillel said that's not enough. Try to be from Talmidim of Aaron that he was Oyev Shalom and Rodef Shalom. He was Oyev Abrios and makar the Torah. That's a very big lesson, and that's what the Torah is teaching us here. That Pinchas, in his act of violence, in his act of murder really, and a public act of murder, and not just one person, he killed two people at the same time and lifted them up on a spear for everyone to see, seemingly a very crude and violent and non-Jewish way of acting. Hashem says, no, he's supposed to be miyuchas all the way back to Aaron. He did an act of Aaron right now. He did an act of Oyev Shalom, and Rodef Shalom. He did an act of Oyeves Abrios Makarven l'Torah. Because what he did here, Hashem says, was Heishives Chamasi. Right? Before he did that act, I actually was going to destroy the Jewish nation. The plague, which took 24,000 lives, could have spread and even killed more Jews. So, partially what Hashem is saying is realize that this act of violence actually saved the Jewish nation and brought shalom. That's why the reward of it is Hinani no sein lo es brisi shalom. I'm giving him the bris of shalom. Why? Because he achieved shalom. He ran after shalom. That's what he did with this act. He went ahead and achieved shalom. And he got the bris kahuna. Haisalo lazaru akara bris kunasolo. The word shalom, if everybody looks in their chumash at some point, we'll see, there's a note here, it's not just the printing error, that the word shalom is spelled shin, lamed, vav, mem, right? The vav in shalom is what's called katia, like broken, crippled almost. Katua is like a person whose leg is like crippled. And so instead of having pure vav that goes from all the way up here all the way down to here, a straight line. It goes down a touch, then there's a gap, then there's another. It's in the beginning of Parshas Pinchas. It's in Perik Kaf Hey, which is interesting because that's the beginning of the word Kohen. And it's Pasik Yud Beis. L'chein amor hineni nosein lo as brisi shalom. I'm giving Pinchas brisi shalom. But shalom is katua. Shalom is katia. It's broken. It's crippled. What's going on over there? So there are different explanations about this. The Balaturim has a few explanations, which are interesting. I wanted to say my own pshat, which is what we were saying before. That shalom doesn't just mean being a yes man. What do we see from Pinchas? He's bringing shalom, and he's been given the bris shalom, but what did he do? He did one of the most violent anti-shalom tactics that you could imagine. He publicly went and killed the Nasi of Shevet Shimon, because he happened to be doing an Avera with a Midianite woman. Okay? And there is a halacha, right? Kanoim poging bo. He was allowed to do it, but he did it very, very publicly, and in a way that kind of like a lot of Shvatim thought was not a Jewish way to approach things. But Hashem says, no, that is shalom. He created shalom. Because his whole motivation was to bring shalom to Klal Yisrael, to bring all of Klal Yisrael back to doing the Ratzon of Hashem, which is the source of shalom. The source of shalom is doing the Ratzon of Hashem, and also making Hashem happy with Klal Yisrael, which is what he did. Hey, Shivas Chamasiyah. I was very angry with Klal Yisrael till someone stood up and said that they care about whether we're doing the Ratzon Hashem. He was doing a public avera, which was like slapping Hashem in the face and making fun also of Moshe Rabbeinu. He kind of insulted Moshe Rabbeinu. The Nasi of Shevet Shimon basically insulted Moshe Rabbeinu, and when he went to have a relation with the Midianite woman. So Hashem was very angry that they were like publicly flaunting their avera against Hashem and against Moshe Rabbeinu. And nobody knew what to do. The only one who knew how to act was Pinchas. So sometimes, as we said before, the way to achieve shalom is not just by being a yes man. Sometimes you have to get up and do something that's sometimes very startling, right? But you have to be very sure it's halachically permissible and the right thing to do. And then it says only if you're a very big tzaddik, like Pinchas was, that you know your motivation is for the correct reason. So most of us probably couldn't do such an act, but at least we have to realize that shalom is with a vav katua. Shalom means I can sometimes argue with people, but I have to argue in a way that's going to bring shalom. Like we said, nasim ohavi, that it's going to bring us to be ohavi. But it doesn't mean that I have to just be a yes man and just agree with the people around me or with my family. I'm allowed to discuss things. I'm allowed to, for example, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, apparently when his wife was nifter, he made a public statement by the kever. And he says, I'm not going to ask for mechila because I never did anything that needed mechila against my wife. What I think he was saying was that we had such a good relationship. She was such a big tzaddikus that we never had any issues that I feel I have to ask for mechila. I once asked Rav Gantz, who was a Talmud of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I was sitting with him in the Sheva Brachos. I figured now's the time to ask him a good question. And I said, I heard that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said he never had to ask mechila from his wife. What, he never got into an argument with his wife? 70 years of marriage, they never argued once? So probably you could answer that even if yes, he asked for mechila already before, right away, right? Like you shouldn't go to sleep without asking for mechila and making up, or at least every Erev Yom Kippur, etc. But he said to me an interesting thing. Rav Gantz said, so one of the miles of asking a gadol is you get always an interesting answer. He said, no, of course they argued. Like Rabbi Kiva Eger actually says in one place, I stayed up very late arguing about Yiras Shamayim with my wife. You can have different views and discuss it and come to a higher level of understanding with your wife. But, he said, never did Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach say to his wife, stop making me go crazy. Al tibalbel li tarosh, right? Stop mixing me up. Stop driving me crazy, right? In other words, you can get into an argument, but then how do you argue? You argue like a Jew, or you argue like Chas v'Shalom, not the Jewish way, right? And the only way to know is if Nasim Ovi, if you became Ovim through that. And therefore, that's why I said I don't have to ask her for Mechila, because I know every time we'd argue in the Torah way. I presented my view, she presented her view, I thought about it, we weighed it out, we talked it out, maybe we had an argument, but I never felt like we were Oivi, right? Even if we're presenting different views, we were Nasim Ovi. So therefore, there's no need to ask for Mechila. That was Rav Ganz's approach. So that's what I believe the Vav Ketuah is showing. There's a break in the Vav. A Jewish Shalom is not necessarily just being a yes man, right? Like Rav Noach Weinberg made fun of that guy, the famous story when the guy said, he was not Jewish, he wanted to show his religion's better. So he said, okay, then it says, if I ask you for something you're supposed to give me, so give me your wallet. He gave him his wallet. Give me your pants, give me your shirt. Made the guy a few times, the guy had to leave his office naked, right? Because what was Rav Noach trying to show him? Your approach to being a shalom, and shalom is the wrong approach. You end up being a stupid idiot walking around naked, right? But the Jewish approach is shalom with a vav ketuah, right? You have to make shalom, but with a vav ketuah, you have to do it with seichel. If someone's doing something wrong, like Pinchas, you have to talk to them and show them. Maybe even sometimes do an action to right a wrong. But it has to be with the intention to make shalom, with the intention to be nasim oyavi. And I just wanted to end off with one last thought. It says, "V'hai solo," and it shall be for him bris kahunas olam. He became a Kohen. He wasn't originally a Kohen, Pinchas. He became a Kohen. Now, if you read the words the way I'm reading the words, he gave him a bris of shalom, and then it says, "And that will be to him bris kahunas olam." The shalom made him a Kohen. It wasn't two separate things. Shalom, I'm giving him, and Kohen, Kahuna. He said, that which I just gave him, Bris Kunas Shalom, that will be for him, Bris Kunas Olam. What does that mean? That will make him into a Kohen? Yes, because a Kohen, really, if you think about it, that's his whole job, is to make Shalom between Klal Yisrael and Avinu Sheba Shamayim. We have a bear, as the Kohen says, okay, I'm going to devote my whole life to bringing your korbanos and sprinkling the blood of all those things and doing this and doing that. Why? To make Shalom between Klal Yisrael and Avinu Sheba Shamayim. Whereas in Machlokas, is a Kohen a shliach of the Jewish nation, or is he a shliach of Hashem? And there's two different views, and in a sense, they're both right. Hashem sent the Kohen to do a job, but really we're setting the Kohanim to bring our korbanos. What's the answer? That's what he is. He's right in the middle to make shalom between Klal Yisrael and Hashem. So Bris Kunas Olam is Brisi Shalom. It is an extension of being an Ish Shalom, to go ahead and bring peace to Klal Yisrael and to the Jewish nation. So at this time, we should be zoicha that all the averas which led to the Churban will be fixed, and especially in our hearts, we should be brought to loving our fellow Jews, even if, like as the Chofetz Chaim says, even if we don't have any reason to love them. So it should be avas chinam instead of sinas chinam, and we should learn from Pinchas to have bris shalom, with the shalom ketuah, that we're allowed to argue, we're allowed to do things to right wrongs, but it has to be in a way that maybe at the time looks like oivin, but it's nasim oihavin, zelazeh, beineinu levein our fellow Jews, and beineinu levein Avinu Sheba Shamayim, bring the Gula Shleim and Rabbi